Today we're going to look at three things. Were we created to work? Number two, hey, God's supposed to be the provider. What am I doing all the work for? And then three, if you're not working, how is that seen by God? I'm Desmond Douglas. This is a Bible study about money. Stay tuned. All right, so let's get into this one. So the first one is going to be where we created to work. And we're going to look at Genesis 2:15, okay? It says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. So for one right there, it's just telling you that we were created to work. You know, you talk about either Adam and Eve or even Cain and Abel. They all had responsibilities. Now they had responsibilities to cultivate the land. God provided the raw materials, and he expected them to actually grow it, expand it, develop it. And so that's considered a privilege, believe it or not. You know, he didn't do this with the angels. He did this with human beings. We are little gods. We were created in his image. He expects us to now create for ourselves. Now, ultimately, he is the provider because he provided all the raw materials. But we were supposed to take those raw materials and we were supposed to develop them. You know, we're able to do what we do today. I'm talking to you on video. You know, we're able to do this because we took the raw materials that God once gave us and we were able to create and work and work and work because of it. And so the cool thing about work is the fact that, you know, we get to understand God and we get to draw on God and his materials, but also his wisdom, right? Spirit to spirit and really connect with God. But it's also so that we can serve other people. And so God gives us each gifts and talents that we're expected to use. And how can we be expected to use it if we're not working? So the work is not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, we could get, exhausted and, hey, we don't work, 7 days a week. Even God, when creating the world, he did it in 6 days and then took the seventh day to rest. So rest is just as important, as work, but there's still a breakdown of how we're supposed to do it. We were and are expected to work. Think about it in a full day. A third of our day is working. Another third is going to be, leisure, enjoying our time, spending time with family and doing things that we enjoy. And then the other third is sleep and rest, because rest is also very important. And so God really broke this thing down. And so just to answer the question, if you ever thought about it, if it ever just dawned on you, am I supposed to be working? Well, yeah. Spoiler alert, okay? All right, so we're supposed to cultivate the land, watch the land produce. There's a gratification that comes from fulfilling an assignment. That we're just wired that way. Sure, it could be hard work sometimes, but doesn't it feel good when you actually get just the smallest task, just cleaning the house or doing something, finishing an assignment? There's a gratification that comes from that. Because inside we're wired to want that, and we're supposed to push. If we weren't pushing the envelope, see, if we stay stagnant in our lives, then we're actually deteriorating. Our minds are supposed to be challenged. If we're not feeding our mind, if we don't have any type of, wisdom or knowledge that we're feeding our minds, it deteriorates. This world is constantly moving forward, constantly. Whether we're asleep or we're awake, this world is moving forward, and we're expected to move forward with it and be productive citizens. We were not just created to just stand here and be idle. Some of the old folks would say an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And hey, I don't know if that's biblical, but you know what? It's true. If you're just sitting around, then you have you're more likely to be doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, as opposed to working and doing something productive and moving forward, pushing the envelope, helping and serving other people. See, it's interesting, and I don't mean to go off, but the way that God created this whole thing, yeah, we're serving other people, but it also allows us to work as a community. And so you may be a silversmith, you may be, a butcher, and we could come together and I could make you this, equipment, and you could provide me with the food that I need. And so, as we are serving the Lord, and God is ultimately the provider of it all, but we're able to serve each other, because we can't all do one thing. So when we come together as a community, and that's one of the beautiful things about work, how God could work behind the scenes and show us and work through us to get to other people. Working could teach us a whole lot about ourselves. That lazy and sluggard is what they call it in Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs 23. That says a lot about your character. That says a lot about how your spiritual man needs to be more mature. And so through work, we're able to see a lot of things. We can get a self-reflection, on things that we need some areas of opportunity for ourselves. So I'll leave it at that, okay? So we are supposed to serve others, and yes, we were intended to work. So now, if God is the provider, why are we doing all the work? And I kind of talked about it before, but let's look in the Word. It says in Colossians 3:23 through 24, it says, "Work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward." You are serving the Lord Christ. So it's very clear here to say that, look, although we are created to work, and it doesn't seem like God is getting any glory out of it from us doing all this work down here, He is. And we're supposed to do our work as unto Him. Our gifts and our talents were always supposed to also provide that way for us. It says in the Word that our gifts and talents will bring us among kings. So there are things that we desire in our lives. And how are we supposed to get it? It's not just going to drop out of the sky. There's no dollars dropping out of heaven. And if they are, let me know, because I want to be there too. But that's just not how it works. However, God's able to use the skills and gifts that He's imparted in us, because He knew that we would have needs and wants and desires, and we can use what we're given, our raw materials, to create, to produce. And so that's how He is, in essence, a provider. And so He's expecting us to take it and run with it. Take the mantle and just go ahead. And the sky's the limit. The world's the limit. That's another beautiful thing about it. We live in America and we feel, hey, this is the land of opportunity. That's how God created it before America was even established. And so there are no excuses. When God gives you something, you take it and you run with it. You expand with it. There's nothing that can stop you. If God's for you, there's no one or anything that could be against you. Just know that. All right. So I also want to share here, and it says in Deuteronomy 8:18. All right. So first of all, God is the source of it all. He allows us to get the wealth with our skills, like I just finished explaining. Okay. And that's meant to produce our income, to cover those things that we need, because He said in His Word that He will provide for all of our needs according to His riches and glory by Christ Jesus. So if you're ever in a need, do you need to have a nice car? No, but nevertheless, He has given us more than just enough. Okay? His grace is sufficient, and everything He gives us is in abundance if we know how to tap into it, into those resources. Okay? Deuteronomy 8:18, it says, "And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to get wealth, that He may confirm His covenant, which He swore to your fathers as it is this day." So God created community, and it's brilliant how, He kind of works behind the scenes, His providence. We can see His fingerprints all over these things if we really pay attention to it. And He wants us to serve other people, do right by our fellow man, because He's going to bless that. He's going to increase that. He's going to increase your efforts. Someone said, and I like it, it says He could put the super on your natural, but you need to be able to use your raw materials, your natural that He's given you, so that He can then work behind the scenes and work along with you, so you guys can cooperate. Okay? And remember the two greatest commandments. So, God said you want to serve God with all your heart, mind, strength, and all of those things. And then the second commandment is to serve your neighbor, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so there's no working. So, and that's where it gets a little tricky, because we start looking at, all right, God, I do the work as unto you, but I don't know about my supervisor. I don't like him or her, I don't like my coworkers. It's always some drama going on here. Or these customers, I don't know why they say the customer's always right, because they're not always right. And you know what? They aren't always right. But that's another way that we are able to get kind of smoothed out on our rough edges. When we may come into this world and we all need to mature. You don't start out being able to lift a 300-pound, weights. And so it's gradual. And that's another thing that work is doing. It's maturing us. It's perfecting us. And so we need this. If not even for the money, you know what I mean? Not even for the money aspect of it, we need it for self-development. And so that's very important. God gets maximum mileage out of everything that he creates. Trust and believe. So if you thought that working was a part of the grand scheme of things, you're sadly mistaken. And another spoiler alert, if you're thinking that heaven's just going to be just kick back, feet under the up on a hammock and just chilling out, yeah, that'd be probably part of it, but there's definitely going to still be work. What we see here on earth is definitely going to be a reflection of what's going to be in heaven, just on a much larger scale, much better scale, without all of the downside, with no downside, all the upside, but still the same principles will apply. Okay, so we'll keep it moving here. Now, if we aren't working, how is it being seen by God? Okay, so here we go. We're going to go to 2 Thessalonians 3:7-9, and it says, "For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. We were not idle," there's that word again, idle, "when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked night and day, laboring and toiling so that we would not be a burden to any of you. We did this not because we do not have the rights to such help, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you to imitate." So hold on now. This is Paul. He's really, really giving us a definitive understanding of how God sees working. His first job, first and foremost, was the ministry, okay? But besides that, God blessed him, again, with some raw materials. He blessed him with the skill and the talent to be a tent maker. That's how he made his living. He was able to make his living off of building tents and can make good income off of that, as, by the way. But here he is out on the mission field, and he's saying he was justified and just saying, hey, I'm out here ministering. I'm spreading the gospel. I don't need to make any tents right now. I should be taken care of by everyone here because of who I am and who I'm representing, I should say, and what I'm doing out here. But that's not what he says. He says, "For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example." So for one, he's being a leader. And that's saying a lot about leaders. Hey, you got to lead by example, not just with lip service. So he's showing them what the example looks like. He's not just telling them, giving them an example by telling them. He's showing them. He's saying that we were not idle when we were with you. We didn't just sit around, had our feet kicked up and, watched all of you guys toil and do the work. Nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. He went there spreading the gospel. He came. First of all, he had the money. How did he have the money? He had a job. So he had the money. And then second of all, he paid them. He paid them for it while he was out there ministering. So that's just a note to, some of these preachers out here. And mind you, side note, not knocking any preachers out there at all. We have to realize that before we start bashing preachers about having too much, more than what we think they should have, you have to realize that some of these, the word doesn't have a price. God doesn't charge for the word. But God also imparts some skills and gifts and talents to some of these preachers. Some of them sing, some of them write books and do things like that. And why can't they earn millions and millions of dollars and provide for their family in that way? Why can't they live a luxurious lifestyle? If that's how God, intended for them to live, who are we to judge? Just because they're serving in a pastoral capacity, hey, you don't know what other, other skills and talents they have, and things on the side for them to provide. So, just want to get off of that for a minute. But what this is saying is he was a preacher. He was spreading the word, but he wasn't using that as an excuse to just get them to take care of him. All right. So I want you to be aware of that. On the contrary, we work night and day, laboring and toiling so that we would not be a burden to any of you. He didn't want to be a burden to the flock. He wanted to serve them. He wanted to give them word. He wanted to give them wisdom. At the same time, he's showing them something, right? So we did this not because we don't have the right to it, right? Not because he didn't have the right to it, to having such help, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you to imitate. Okay, so that was his job. He was taking care of what he needed to take care of on a mission field, but he was also a tent maker. All right, he had the right to sit back and just preach, but he was very intentional about working. If our minds and our souls aren't being challenged by work, then like I said before, we're deteriorating from the inside. And so we never want to get into this lazy type of mentality. Just to use a little example, don't mean to strike anyone the wrong way, but some people during this pandemic that we've been going through have had some have been let go from their jobs. Unfortunately, businesses were really suffering. People had to get laid off or fired. Unfortunately, some people were receiving more money from unemployment than they were when they were actually working. And so they're thinking, hey, why work? Why am I working? I'm just going to sit back and collect these checks. And so is that the right mentality to have? I mean, hey, it's meant to be a benefit when you're, going through hard times. But the person that's just going to sit back and really just freeload and take and not give, then we have to see how God has to look at something like that. Really want to take a look at your heart condition to see if that was something right. Do you feel convicted inside that, hey, I should be doing something about this? For some people, hey, it was just a blessing. You received even more, double for your trouble. So I'm not trying to bash anyone for collecting it. Sometimes it may take time to get back on your feet. And that was just a blessing for the season. Take it. I'm more so talking about the mentality of people that say, I'm going to get over. This mentality of getting over on other people, on the government, on systems, then we have to really check ourselves for that, because there are people who want to prey on these sorts of things. Okay. So in summary, is work right? Is work something that God expects us to do? Absolutely. He intended for it. He created us to work, and he definitely expects us to work. Not only to work, but to work to where and being mindful that this is a privilege, that he's given us skills and gifts and talents for this reason. And if you do it right, he'll supply for all of your needs according to your riches and glory. You know what I mean? Even more than that, because he said that he can do exceedingly and abundantly more than you can even ask or think. But we also have to play our parts. He's given you and imparted to you skills and gifts and talents. If you use those and put them in the workplace to serve other people and do your work excellent as unto God, not to people, not looking at co-workers and looking at, supervisors or looking at customers, then you could really get a lot accomplished. God can use you in a mighty way, not just to make a buck, but to help other people, to encourage other people, to enlighten other people, to steer people closer to God. If they see your good work ethic, then they be like, man, this person comes hard. He's not stealing time. He's not coming in late and leaving early, putting in a good, hard day's worth of work. That sweat equity I was talking about, that good old-fashioned elbow grease, then that's going to be a person that's going to get the promotions. Because I didn't go into the scripture where it says promotion comes from the Lord. So you could be working for a very mean, bad supervisor, but that mean, bad supervisor is not limiting your ceiling. You can still go up when you have God on your side. How do you have God on your side? When you're in his graces, when you're doing things the way he intended. That's why we're supposed to check in with him, see where we're supposed to be. If you're at a job where you just dread going, then maybe you're in the wrong line of work. You know what I mean? This should be enjoyable also. No one said you had to be miserable at work, so just think about that. Maybe you need to pray more just to understand what line of work is best suited for you and your personality and your type. So just I would encourage you to look into those things. And look, God's divine design to enjoy the land, even take time for rest, but we must work. He expects that. 1/3 of our time should be at work. 1/3 of our time should be at the leisure with family, enjoying the fruits of our labor. 1/3 for rest, because we need rest just the same. Okay? So in the last, to sum it up, it uncovers our spiritual condition. And at the end of the day, God is, I told you, it's just brilliant how he does all of this stuff. He's getting maximum mileage out of this because he's using work, people, different personalities coming at us from different angles. It's teaching us, it's maturing us, it's perfecting us. So it's definitely a spiritual thing. No one starts with the 300-pound, dumbbell or whatever you want to call it, right? You start with the little 5-pound dumbbells, and then next thing you know is 10 pounds, then 20, then 50, then 100, and you're really working your way up to it. And so when we start to develop a work ethic, another good reason why we go through school in those early years, so we could develop skills, talents, and then by the time we actually get ready for the workplace, then we'll have a bare foundation so that we're going into it and we can do it right, and we can do it for as long as we possibly can. So I hope that this was a blessing to you. Does God expect you to work? Well, you answer that question now. Hopefully this was a blessing to you. Hopefully this was encouraging. And as always, please subscribe. Please hit the like button. Please share with family and friends. This is a Bible study about money, and I'm Desmond Douglas. Until next time, peace.